Welcome to Off the Post. I'm Russ Cohen. We've got Anthony Mingione. And how are you?
Doing all right, Russ. Interesting afternoon so far, I would say.
Yeah, if you have cats and dogs, or at least if it's raining cats and dogs near you, like it is us. And Michael Jello, how are you?
Mass hysteria. I'm peachy. How are you?
Oh, that's good. Well, let's talk trades because that's all we're going to talk about on this show. And the next show, which will be on Friday at 2:00, and the next one, then we'll analyze them all. So just buckle up for all of that. So let's state the Seattle trade because I have some definite thoughts on that.
Yeah.
But actually, my screen just went blank, so that's good. Hold on. It was right there now. Okay. So Seattle got, a first round pick in 26, first round pick in 27, Toronto's second in 25, and Mike Eisman, who is basically an enforcer.
Or finer.
For Yanni Gord and Borkstrand and a fifth. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my thought, and you guys could expand on it. My thought is every fan base or everybody reporter who has another fan base in mind is thinking, oh, well, if they got this, our guy will get that. Listen, this is John Cooper saying, I want Gord at any price. And Borkstrand is a proven goal scorer. You get both of those guys, you have got something. And most of the other fan bases that are talking about players don't have a player on there that has won multiple Stanley Cups, plus can play center, and a proven goal scorer. So that's why this got it. Is it a high price? Sure.
Yeah, but this is also kind of part and parcel with what it follows Tampa's patterns of the last several years. I mean, it's interesting that that someone had put up the Tanner Jeannot return for a few years back, which is basically an entire draft almost, it seemed, for Tanner Jeannot. But and the fact this trade goes down and I see the multiple number of picks, I'm like, man, Tampa deal if I've ever seen one.
Oh, yeah.
So, again, Yanni Gord's got a great reputation. This is, again, for Tampa, they know him well. I think it's if they're trying to really buck up for the playoffs, I think this is a good strong move. Getting Bjorkstrand, I think, was an excellent part of this deal as well. Adding a known goal scoring commodity. Yeah, the return's a bit. It is high, but again, if Tampa has the idea that they can make a run here, then this is the kind of move that you make to try to reinforce things for that.
Yeah, I mean the factor here. First of all, I think the price was obscene. It was.
Obscene.
I give Ron Francis a lot of credit to get, what he got for. I mean, Gord is a rental. Part of the deal,
But I wouldn't be surprised if they made that deal. They make a deal like this. I think Gord, they have the intention of. I think they've missed. I think Tampa has missed.
They've
Gord.
missed him for
They've
sure.
Missed him, and I think this. I would not be surprised if they have got a deal in mind to re-sign him.
If you looked at Tampa, they were extremely top heavy. They had two really good lines, and their bottom six was amongst the worst in the league. I mean, Gergensons and, Gergensons doesn't produce anymore. He's a solid veteran who can play defensively, but they got no offense out of their bottom six. Now you get Gord, who can still play a third line role, and Bjorkstrand either plays in the top six and extends the lineup or plays with Gord. So, they've added, now they have a top 8 instead of a top 6. So that's good. And clearly Julien Brisebois and that organization, and I admire them for it, they don't give a shit about draft picks.
They read like the LA Rams, right? I mean, pretty much it's bleep them picks.
Is it Mike Ditka trading the entire draft for Ricky Williams? I mean, that's what it's sort of like.
Yeah, I don't know if it's quite.
It's not to that level.
It's not to that level, Mike. But I would say, Tampa is known for. Making these kind of moves where they deal off the picks and then they count on their ability to find guys and develop guys. But again, the last few years has seen that as you said, that bottom six has ebbed in terms of really good production and has made them an easier team to play against. Adding Gordy and adding Gord and adding Bjorkstrand to the lineup makes that, changes that dynamic.
Yeah, I agree. So then Vitek Vanacek went to Florida for Patrick Giles. Okay. Mike called it, though. We were on the phone, Mike and I, and we were trying to figure out where Vanacek would go. And after like a minute conversation, Mike figured that out. So, yeah, I mean, I think they're going under the assumption that, hey, if Bob's not healthy at some point in the playoffs, they're out anyhow. So I don't think they're counting on Vanacek for like playoff backup. He's a good regular season backup.
No, I don't think so. But again, Vanacek, I mean, as I always say to you guys with regards to Vanacek, every time he get traded, it's caveat emptor because of his injury history. It's just he is. But again, they're not going to have to ride him as hard, because again, you have Bob ahead of him. So on the face of it, I think it's a solid move. If you're after moving off Spencer Knight in a deal, and again, Florida's another team that right now is trying to maximize their window at the moment.
Yeah. Well, imagine if those two match up again. I haven't looked at what the odds are, but just imagine.
Well, I mean, if Toronto wins the Atlantic, yeah, I mean, now they both strengthened themselves. I mean, and under the radar thing, and you may think it means nothing, but they signed Jesse Puljujarvi to a contract for the remainder of the year. So, I mean, in terms of lineup depth, 13th, 14th forward, you could do a lot worse.
It means nothing.
Maybe nothing. I'm just saying.
That's the way I feel. You said it exactly the way I felt.
Hey, Russ, we want you to express everything. Yeah, but no, but I like the Seth Jones move. I mean, they got him at $7 million instead of $9.5. I still think that this is going to mean they're going to have to make a tough decision. They're probably not going to be able to sign Sam Bennett now. I think they're probably, they could get Ekblad maybe.
Yeah, they can get him for less.
Right, but I think pretty much Bennett is gone. But I mean, they're going to worry about that in the summer, and knowing Florida and knowing the state of Florida and the low state tax or the no state tax, they could get Bennett for a lot less than some other teams could. So it's not impossible. But now these two Florida teams, and who knows who's going to win the division? It's really tight. Florida and Tampa are both playing well. Toronto has won, I think, 7 of their last 8. It's going to be a race down to the end of the season. But the thing is, there is a prize here. If you win the Atlantic, you don't have to. I mean, Florida Tampa or Florida Toronto or Tampa Toronto. That is the 2-3 corridor of death. Whoever comes out of that one, just like Dallas, Colorado in the Central, those teams are effed because, one of them may win, but then Winnipeg and whoever wins the Atlantic are sitting there saying, I have no problems. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's like facing the Velocci brothers in a smash-up derby.
For those who have any idea what that
is. If not, Google it.
You're going to have to.
Where's Leather Tuscadero?
Oh, she's a very talented musician, Mike.
Yes.
So anyhow, so now I was asked, Mark Benjamin asked in the chat room, hey, who might be a surprise one that's going to happen? Prediction. So I'll give you mine. And I don't know why outlets are kind of late on this, but I don't know, I've probably been saying it for a month about Chris Kreider, getting traded at some point. There does seem to be like a little bit of a drumbeat now where maybe that's going to happen at the deadline. I'm not sure, but I'll give you that one as a surprise because if that happens, that's certainly a big deal. But he's getting dealt for sure.
I think he's getting dealt, but there's just this feeling I have that I think they're going to hold on to Kreider for the playoff. If they can make a playoff
for the playoffs, yes.
But as I said, I'm just saying, for a potential playoff run, and then I that one feels like it's an it's a close to draft day trade.
It does feel that way, but you never know.
Like talking about it as you're flying into Los Angeles, Russ.
Yeah,
for the draft, and you get that one on your phone as you get off the plane.
I just don't think they're going to get the value for Kreider that they could, knowing that Kreider has been injured all year. And you saw how he played in the Four Nations, and you've seen how he's played during the season. But people know what he's like when he's right. So to me, if Drury trades him, he's trading him at 65 cents on the dollar rather than what he could get in the summer, because I think he's a valuable player. I think he's still got something left.
Yeah, I agree. We'll talk about
breaking news. Jack Hughes did have shoulder surgery.
Wait. So hold on. He had shoulder surgery. What we heard earlier, like a day ago, was they're going to evaluate it. Now he has had surgery, and we're finding out.
I mean, they had a data. They evaluated it, and
this is. But you have to admit, this is a fast timeline, Ant.
I think the evaluation was already done. They didn't want to say, and the surgery's already done. And again, that's up to them to make that move.
Sure, no, it is.
And he is done for the season.
Yeah, no question.
When you had the report of Luke being very upset in the locker room, after the injury happened, this to me was always. This seemed more likely than not that this was the kind of injury that was going to put him out for the year.
And Russ, unfortunately, that prejudice when it comes to Jack Hughes is going to pop up again because everybody said great player, but he can't stay healthy.
Okay, I mean that's fine. The only thing I could say is they'll have cap space, and Fitzy will be busy. He'll try and fill in something. They're definitely on the path for the playoffs. I don't think they're going to fall out of that because I think all they have to do is play 500 hockey where they are, and they might drop out of the 3 spot, but they'll make the playoffs.
Yeah. But now all of a sudden with him being out,
they're in trouble in the playoffs.
They're in trouble, and if they're looking for potential center, if they're looking for center depth again for a team like the Flyers, who are in the midst of trying to create a market for Scott Lawton, this has the potential of another pathway for the Flyers.
If they want to expend assets, I mean, because I don't think they can go very far without Jack Hughes. If they want to plug the hole and see, but you're going to come up against Carolina if it's a 2-3. I mean, the funny thing would be, if they fall into the first wild card and then Sheldon Keefe and the Devils play Toronto, if Toronto wins the Atlantic, that would be.
That would be fun.
The one thing we could say about Sheldon Keefe is he has a lot of experience bowing out in the first round. So that would, he can prepare his team. I kid.
There it is.
It was just there.
Mike's just going to keep those drumsticks in his hand for the rest of the show, basically.
But
rim shots are us.
I do think they're going to look for a more offensive player than Scott Lawton. No offense to Scott. I think they're going to look for some.
No, I think if you're looking for, maybe they contact St. Louis about Braden Shen.
They might. I mean, that's a possibility. Although,
see, I get the feeling now that the Shen stuff, the Parayko stuff, the Bennington stuff, the Buchnevich stuff, that's all done because St. Louis is winning. Now they're a point out of the playoffs?
Yeah, everybody's a point out, though, Mike.
Unless Doug Armstrong does a Paul Stastny part 2, which you remember, they were in the playoffs. They were in 8th spot, and he traded his number 1 center to Winnipeg. Then I don't know if he's going to do that again, but I mean, it's possible, but I would say they have a decent chance of getting and slipping into that second wild card, and then you never know what happens.
Yeah, I mean, there are other centers out there, or at least maybe attainable. So, or maybe there's somebody else they'll move to center and get just a winger that could score. So I think there's options for them. But yeah, as far as them going far in the playoffs, that doesn't seem good now. So, it is what it is. Talking about a team, I do some coverage now about Canadiens for Hockey News, and I totally disagree with the way they're going about it. To me, and this is what they're talking about, like Martin St. Louis is saying, this is our playoffs now. The only thing is you're not in the playoffs, and it is different. Meaningful games are meaningful games most of the year anyhow. If you want to say, well, this means more to the young guys, I don't buy it. When you're in the playoffs, sure. That's when everything changes because the play changes, everything changes. Now, if they're in the playoff hunt the last week, maybe I'll change my tune on it, but I don't think they will be. So now they're pulling back David Savard. They're going to probably let him walk for nothing or a really bad draft pick. I don't think they're going to retry. I don't know if they're trying to re-sign him.
He's a Montreal native. They might be able to get him to take less. I mean, we've talked about them maybe trading Matheson in the summer because he's 1 year away from unrestricted free agency.
Yeah,
I mean, I agree, Russ. I think I look at the Montreal situation and it's like it echoes what Washington did last year. They emptied the tank just to slip into the 8th or just to slip into the second wild card, and then they were just run over. Like the Rangers ran over to them like a tank. And the problem is that What Washington did in the summer was add Mangiapane and Markstrom
and Chychrun
and Chychrun, and there's no way.
And Thompson. Did we say Thompson? Yeah.
And Thompson, the most importantly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there is no way that the Montreal Canadiens will be able to get anywhere close to bringing those types of players in over the summer. Why? Because they can't get players to go to Montreal. That's why they're developing their own players, because you can't get players to go. Patrick Laine had no other option other than going to Montreal. And look how that's turning out right now.
But I did write yesterday, I think. I don't know. I write every day. But yesterday I wrote that they have to weaponize their cap space.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if you feel like you might make the playoffs, they still have almost $7 million in cap space, and there's no reason not to weaponize that. There are teams that are looking to get players' contracts down on a third-party basis, like, Risto would be one of them. We could talk about him in a minute. So I don't know why you wouldn't do that. Now, again, I want to also point out something. Obviously, Seattle had no problem taking draft picks. For those fans or media that are saying, draft picks, we're kind of over that. We want to make these trades for players. Easier said than done, people. Nobody's doing it. Only doing it with star players involved. Nobody's doing it for really good prospects. And I mean really good. There have been some, moderate ones or mediocre ones or average ones, but it's not happening. So you take those draft picks and you walk in on draft day and you look at teams, or you talk to teams before draft day, and you basically start calling teams that are going to have trouble retaining certain players because of the cap or whatever, and that's when you stack those draft picks and give them to them for that said player or players that get dealt, because players get dealt on draft day.
Well, the interesting thing here is that look at the two teams that right now that have acted as the middleman in deals. You had New Jersey acting as the middleman with the Trent Frederick deal with Edmonton. And New Jersey at that point, now maybe they knew that Jack Hughes was done for the season, so they knew they were going to have cap space to play with, and they could get an asset. More than likely that's the case. But then you have Detroit acting as the middleman between Tampa and Seattle. Okay, Detroit is in a playoff race right now. They didn't really get anything tangibly out of this deal. Were they the ones who got Essenwa, or was it, or did he go to Seattle? I think he went to Seattle. So they only got a draft pick out of this. But why do they do it? Because they're getting something tangible out of it. And I don't understand. Right here in River City, the Buffalo Sabres and the Montreal Canadiens, as you mentioned, and Anaheim and a couple other teams. If you're a general manager in this league, if you are not weaponizing your cap space to get assets, you should be fired. It is a fireable offense. Now, if ownership is telling you that you don't have the flexibility or the wherewithal to do that, that's fine. But you're depriving your organizations of an asset for 1/4 of the season to retain a salary. So if they don't do that, if these teams that I mentioned and other teams as well don't do that, these general managers, they should be axed.
Now, I will say this. The Montreal Canadiens print money. We know that. But as we saw, Gary Bettman was on CNBC talking about the tariffs, talking about how 25% of the league revenue is coming out of Canada. And you know what? If the dollar keeps dropping there compared to the U.S. dollar, because players get paid in U.S. dollars, teams could be less willing to do that. Because now the Canadians are not one of them, but could be less willing to do that, because then they're like, okay, you know what? We got to make up for the difference that we're paying in funds, and the dollar's not going up. And so there could be a few teams that are out in Canada that might not, might go a different way, but certainly the Canadians aren't one of them. Like they sell out. There shouldn't be a problem there money wise. So I don't know. We'll see, but I feel the same way, Mike. The New York Islanders. So Brock, they let Brock Nelson play his last game, possibly. That was fine. Shannon Hogan did a great interview with him post-game. There's very few meaningful post-game interviews that kind of like get, out in the stadium. And like once in a while you hear one that's kind of like really good. This was good. Like Brock Nelson was practically crying. She was practically crying. It was heartfelt. And I think they let him pass Bobby Nystrom for games played for the Islanders. So I think he's the all-time games played guy.
Yeah.
Great. He should be traded by tonight. Like, that's it. You had your moment. It's great.
It feels like it. I mean, if the vibe of the moment was that he's going to get traded, that's all those things kind of felt like that. Like,
yes,
reminded me again a bit of when Claude Giroux played his 1,000th game.
Oh, yeah.
And the vibes where everybody knew within days
yes,
that trade was going to go down. Nelson has that feel right now, and I think if the Islanders are being responsible, that trade that is a trade that they should be moving him to a place where he has a chance to compete.
Well, I'm surprised they weren't playing, so long, farewell, Auf Wiedersehen, goodbye, in the background, because he's gone. And if Lou Lamoriello is not just completely abrogating his responsibility as a general manager, I mean, if you're not getting him signed, you're getting him traded. And
so what would he look like on the Devils, who need a center?
Yeah. That would be a good fit.
Yeah, Nelson makes perfect sense, especially if the Devils have designs on, despite the loss of Hughes, having someone again. Nelson's not a 1-for-1 replacement with Hughes.
No, but he's a good fill-in.
But he's as good. But he's probably as good as you're going to get at the deadline for sure.
You move Hischier as your as your 1C, and then you plug in Nelson as your 2C, which maybe he's not that anymore, but he's better. And
and you know what? And you know what the funny part about this is? Lou probably has the number to a phone in New Jersey that they've never used in the last 6 years or 7 years or 10 years, and all of a sudden
it's a dial phone.
It'll start ringing, and somebody will be like,
it's got the buttons on.
Where's that ringing coming from? And all of a sudden Lou will be on the other end of it.
It's Satriel's. It's the place in the Sopranos.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry, Lou. I just had to.
Too easy.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was gonna. Now, what I think is interesting here, and I think you're right, Russ, in the respect that you cannot use the Tampa Bay price tag in that deal as a primer for all the other price tags that teams are going to pay for rental centers or even centers that are, have term left in their contract, because that's why I said that deal is absurd, because it was so over the top. But, if Cooper wanted Gord and he knew Gord, then they were going to get Gord. But how is that going to affect Anthony? How is that going to affect the price for Nelson? How is that going to affect the price for Scott Lawton? How is that going to affect the price for Luke Cunnin? These are the second tier guys. Yeah. And I think it's going to raise it a little bit, but not to the point where, teams are going to be trading a first round pick for. I'd still be surprised if a team trades a first round pick for Lawton. I really would.
Yeah, we're going to see. Again, Philly seems to be holding out on this in this run, but again, the clock is ticking, and what we will see. I keep pointing back to a trade that would have first round value. It doesn't necessarily mean you're getting a first round pick, which is why I do think they've been knocking on doors for player replacements as much as I think as much as a draft pick replacement would be in this circumstance. But again, it's going to be interesting. Again, it actually with the two deals that have happened that had some substantive returns beyond obviously the Gord deal. There's nothing about this where Briere would seem any less emboldened to wait until someone gets desperate enough.
Now, we'll tell you this. Danny is usually out in the hallway at least 2-3 times a game. He was out there once last game. So he was certainly busy and talking to people. And so, he's trying for sure.
Well, okay. I can't attest to the validity of the rumors, but we have heard, there's been Philadelphia, Toronto stuff. There always is Philadelphia, Toronto stuff. But, of a talk of a Lawton, Rasmus Ristolainen deal, which I don't know how the hell that would come to pass, because Ristolainen's making 5, Lawton's making 3, and the Leafs
retention's being involved. I think with if that gets combined, Mike, you can almost guarantee the Flyers will be retaining on Risto.
The only problem with that is the Johansson thing's not been solved yet, and who knows. What if it comes out on Friday, the verdict, and they're losing some money on the cap?
Maybe the reason why we've been kind of holding, maybe these are deals that are sort of in the pipeline that if they do get word on that, then they could potentially pull those trigger and have that retention done. But it's interesting to think about. And again, we keep hearing the name Fraser Minten mentioned, Mike, over and over again. Whether or not that's something that does come to pass here, I think certainly in a 1-for-1 situation, I don't blame Toronto for saying no.
Right.
At all. That doesn't work. That doesn't mean though that if you expand the deal and potentially if Ristolainen's included, that you could potentially be extracting.
I mean, Ristolainen. I mean, clearly the Leafs are looking for a 3C and a right shot defenseman who could play in their top 4. And that answers both questions. I think Ristolainen probably plugs in playing either with his old teammate, Jake McCabe, which I think they were defense partners when they were in Buffalo, or he plugs in with Morgan Rielly. But then you have the left-right combo of McCabe and Tanev and Ristolainen with Rielly, or mix them around. But that really solidifies the Leafs defense. I just, I mean, obviously I'm concerned in terms of the and he has avoided the injury bug this year, but Ristolainen has had chronic injuries the last few years. But that's a really hefty price to pay if you're talking Fraser Minten and the Leafs number 1 and 26. You're probably going to have to. The Leafs are probably going to.
Does it have to be? And I keep saying I don't know if it's necessarily. We're saying we keep hearing a first round pick. Who's to say it's not a 2027?
Yeah, I think it would be more like 27.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what that's been my thoughts on this. Is that I don't think it's 20. I could be wrong on this, but I don't think it's 26. I think it's 26. Think so either. Because again, we keep hearing holding out for a first round pick.
Yeah.
But is it necessarily the year number that you're putting in there? I could very easily see Philly trying to drop back and using one of those first round picks from this year to try and something else to try to get a pick for next year's. That's another pathway for Philly. Again, if you're talking about Fraser Minten and a 2027 first, that's something that I think is is something that is conversational.
But like names that have been floated around in potential deal because, and I don't know how much of a fit this would be a guy like David Kampf who's making a couple like $2.4 million that the Leafs. I don't think the Leafs are married to keeping him, and maybe would have to clear that kind of salary to fit those two players in, and that would give the Flyers somebody with term, but he's pretty much a bottom 6 guy. I don't know how much.
Yeah, and they're trying to transit again. Philly doesn't have a lot of center depth, especially after the Morgan Frost trade.
Right.
I mean, obviously they've been fortunate enough with Noah Cates, Noah Cates' production, but when you get beyond that, it gets pretty questionable. And if you add, if Kampf has looked at a guy who's a transitional guy who could play. But again, they have they kind of have a guy like him in Paling to begin with anyway.
Right.
So that's the part where maybe it does not work in that circumstance. Whereas I think Minten, if they acquire Minten, he's going to. My read on that, Russ, is if the Flyers acquire Minten, they're acquiring him to play him on their roster. For sure.
He'd be playing on the roster next year for sure.
And that's
they might. I would say they might actually have to give him a look right now.
Right. Maybe.
If you depending on where you're at,
he hasn't been out of place when he played briefly with the Leafs this year. I mean, I think the Leafs wanted to give him a full year in the American Hockey League. That's why I think there's a little hesitation here because I think he's capable of playing 3C next year with the Leafs. So, and if they're getting Lawton, and I know
Lawton, you're basically that he becomes your 3C.
But I'll tell you the other team that I think is in on Lawton because, and Peter would talk about this, is the Winnipeg Jets. Yeah, he makes sense for Winnipeg. He makes sense for New Jersey. He makes sense for Washington.
And you're getting into exactly why this is where Danny Briere is drumming up as much as high a high up thing on him as possible.
Well, if they're going to do that, though, you would think it would happen today.
Yes,
tonight, because they're playing them. Yeah. Well, only reason I say that is because they're playing them tomorrow. Then they're going to be leaving town, right? And are you going to make Lawton really do this kind of massive travel situation? And so the easier thing is if they can, is to come to the agreement while they're still in Philly, whether it's during this game, before this game. This way, it's easier for him.
We can say it's easier for him.
No, I know
they're not. That's not how they're going to work this. It's going to be basically whoever is the high end offer here, if they think it's another however many hours, one more game gets them to that point, Russ, I feel like they will have to do that. I know want to do. I know you want to do right by Lawton. I completely understand that, but I would also say at the end of the day, if you got the idea that someone might come back to you with something a little bit more, and then you could also go back to that locker room and say, if you do trade him, we did go. You know, we did not deal him for nothing. We dealt him for something that we feel is going to help our future, and that's because you have to remember there was a bit of an ebb when the Flyers had traded Frost and Farabee in that locker room. So I do think it's a way of Briere basically saying, it stinks we have to trade a guy with the character level of a Scott Lawton, but this is who we brought back that we think is going to be a key part of our future.
Okay, couple more things. Somebody in the chat room, I can't find the name now. Sorry, they asked about Ricard Raquel. Oh, it was Khalib. And my thought was Raquel's got 2 more years at $5 million.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it's a little bit of a turnoff. But for a team like the Columbus Blue Jackets, who they already score a lot of goals, but probably want to make sure they could be one of the better scoring teams in the playoffs, he'd be a good ad for them, and they can handle it cap wise.
I don't know how much of a turnoff the term, because he's having a very good year on.
I know, but it's still $5 million for the next 2. It's like, Yeah,
well, I mean, a team like Columbus makes sense because they're going to be sort of at the bottom of the cap floor. So, adding somebody with term and adding somebody with a salary like that wouldn't really faze them. The question is whether he has Columbus on his no trade list.
Right.
He's got something, which is something that at this point of the year, it was funny. Arvidsson for the Oilers. There's been chatter about him maybe getting moved out and Evander Kane getting moved out. Well, Evander Kane's got a 16-team no trade, and Arvidsson apparently nobody knew he has a no move. So all these no moves and no trades.
Oh, they kill you.
Those are hurdles that these general managers are going to have a tough time getting past.
And casually, I'll say, hey, I liked Edmonton getting Trent Frederick. That was good. And Boston's certainly active in the market with Marchand hurt. I don't know for how long, and McAvoy and everybody else out. Even though the points are pretty good, they know that they're not looking good if they even get in the playoffs. So, and they probably won't. So that'll be interesting to see what the Bruins do. As far as the Sabres, Mike, I would say Kevin Adams, the fan reaction to him was like something I haven't seen in a lot of years. He was trending on Twitter. It was like they were really coming after him with pitchforks and it's hard to say that they're wrong.
Well, I mean, at the beginning of the season, we said the Sabres had to make the playoffs or his job was in jeopardy. They're not making the playoffs, and his job is in jeopardy. He's dead man walking. I don't see any way that he survives. Now, the interesting thing here is it was announced, Pierre LeBrun reported about an hour ago that they've reached an agreement on an extension with Jordan Greenway. So 2 years, $4 million per, which I think is a little pricey, but you have to pay players to stay in Buffalo. I mean, that's a Buffalo tax there. It's not the palm trees, but it is the taxes. And the issue here is this is a bad team.
Yeah, but you have good chicken wings. You've got a Sonic now. Like Buffalo has a lot.
We have a Sonic. Yes, we have Popeyes. We have we have the Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
We have all the accoutrements there.
I'm going to say you guys are officially in the 21st century. Congratulations.
Yeah. So, but I mean, his career high is 12 goals. I like him as a player. Don't get me wrong. He's a good physical winger who can skate, who can penalty kill. That shouldn't cost you $4 million.
No, this is top of the market money for this guy.
This is, right. and Greenway, to me, his career slot right now is starting to get like a young Garnet Hathaway, right?
Right.
I think that's kind of and at $4 million, that's pricey.
It is pricey.
Now, they've got they've held out Henry Yoki-Haru the last couple games. I guess they want the 2 goals that he scored for in a row to be like the lasting memory that people have, because he's going to get traded, but he's sort of the fallback for all the, like, if you don't get a righty, if David Savard is off the market, if Colton Parayko's off the market, and you go down the line, then Yoki Haru might be one of the top 2 or 3 right-hand shot defensemen. Yeah. But here's and Jason Zucker. There's a lot of talk about him getting extended like Greenway. But here's the thing: what are you doing? This team is the worst in the Eastern Conference, going to finish in the bottom 5, and the only thing that you're going to do is trade one of your bottom pairing defensemen and re-sign 2 guys. That's not exactly impact moves, and this fan base is fed up. Now, do you want the guy who's dead man walking to make those moves? Maybe not, but I think it's going to be fairly underwhelming. And I think the ire of the Buffalo fan base will rise after March the 7th if they don't do anything. But probably worse than that is doing the wrong thing again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you can't be afraid of doing the wrong thing. Like that's my whole thing is like even if you trade Alex Tuck, if you don't have the right people in there that you feel like can make a mistake. And that's when
I feel like we just got a t-shirt opportunity from Russ. You can't be afraid to do the wrong thing.
But you know what I mean? Like that's when the owner has to step in and say, "Who do I have running this place?"
Well, Russ, this is the issue here. I mean, they're sort of operating in an echo chamber where Ryan O'Reilly trade Stanley Cup, Sam Reinhart trade Stanley Cup, Jack Eichel trade Stanley Cup. They cannot accept another deal where the player who plays like crap here or underwhelms here goes someplace else and all of a sudden he's I mean, there's already a feeling like what is going on, what are we doing wrong, what is the deal, where they can't get the best out of these players and then they go someplace else and they get the best out of them. They can't absorb another body.
It speaks, unfortunately, to the reputation, the culture. Unfortunately, and that's the problem. Yeah. I think, and they try to bring in guys, who had pretty good reps elsewhere. Tuck certainly, I think, from his days in Vegas, just hasn't just hasn't happened.
Yeah, 2 more small things. I know people have been asking about Detroit. I think they'll add a defenseman, but Yzerman doesn't seem like the rental kind of guy. Maybe he'll inquire about someone like Scott Mayfield or someone like that. Wouldn't shock me because I hear things like maybe, he's not long for the Island. I don't know why, but that's just, you hear these things.
Yeah, but you gave him 7 years 2 years ago.
Well, but at least it's a low salary, but yeah, the term is bad. And then the last thing, Darren Dreger said that the Hurricanes have been, and this is his words, canvassed around the league, pushing a possible trade with Mikko Rantanen. And to me, guys, it sounds like they're, like a person who bought a Lamborghini and realized they can't afford it. And now they're like they're desperately trying to get rid of it. And I don't know what's going to happen with that. I don't know if they have enough time.
They bought a Lamborghini and then realized it had to be tuned up, and then the tune-up cost $10,000.
Right.
So, the problem is the Lamborghini. I think the Lamborghini in question is perfectly fine. It's just it's not fitting in the garage properly.
There you go.
That's the problem.
So I mean, I think there are teams out there that would get. Okay, could you see Brant Clark for Rantanen? Because the reports are that
not unless he's signed.
And that's the thing. The reports are that Brant Clark is available. And again, I say
which that makes to me is you could say he's nuts. The question is whether or not Brant Clark, we've all thought that he's supposed to be a really good young defenseman. Is he? But again, we're getting to the point now where it seems to be the evaluation is that. Is he a Shane Gostisbehere, or is he something? Or is he? Where it's going to be more off? It's more the.
But he's clearly an NHL defenseman.
That's their evaluation. He's got 25 points on the season. It's not like he's having a bad year.
I agree, but if there's
I know he's got again. I know it.
Yeah, but looking at how he is playing defense in the AHL, that has to factor into it. But I would also say I would be more patient than LA. I would not have him on the market. Develop his defensive game.
If I was Toronto And I would offer Easton Cowan for Brant Clark.
You wouldn't get it for that.
I know I wouldn't get it, but I mean, it maybe a little more. But
this isn't a swap meet, Mike. I mean, come on.
No, but he's a 22-year-old right shot defenseman who they clearly don't think is.
I don't know if they don't think that. I think they want to see what they could drum up. And also they're like, well, Drew Doughty's back. There's no room. And it's like, yeah, but Drew Doughty's going to be there
35.
Like 2 more years, and that may be it for him. So again, my cautionary tale is, and I wrote about this on NHL Draft Buzz, is, hey, you trade this guy, and when Doughty goes, it's like when you lost Faber. Like, how many of these guys can you lose? You don't have any more of these guys.
Yeah. So unless and they're now a postseason team, so you're not even hoping that one of the higher end,
right?
You're going to end up in the top 5 and have a shot at Matthew Schaefer or somebody like that.
Yeah, they're not getting a shot at that.
They're completely out of play for that. So.
Yeah, so that part's a little weird, but certainly LA is going to do something. I don't know what, but yeah, I mean it's interesting times. The Friday show will definitely be interesting for sure.
Starting again for everybody, we're going to be starting the show. It's going to be 2 o'clock Eastern time for at least a couple hours.
I might eat during the show. I don't know. I've done it before.
Russ is going to come in. He's going to have his chopsticks. He'll have he'll be doing.
I don't do chopsticks. I don't.
He'll be doing kung.
To be fair, Kung Pao chicken.
He may not be eating Kung Pao chicken. I don't know.
I've never eaten Kung Pao chicken.
But you're not a spicy. You're not spicy.
No, I'm not a spicy guy.
Peanut allergy?
No, I'm just not a spicy guy like Anthony said. Well, I might be spicy in language.
No, his takes are spicy, but what he eats is not.
Kung Pao is not that spicy.
Well, it depends. I'm not on a Scoville level, Mike. I'm you know me. I get mild wings every time. Like I'm a mild wing guy.
What's the point?
What do you mean? What's the point? They taste good. Why do I feel like I have to be under attack when I'm eating something? Okay.
Wait a second. I'm not saying pour gasoline on them. I don't like suicide wings. I like hot wings.
I mean, Mike. If let's just put it this way: if it was such a bad choice, why do places have it as an option?
Well, because there's some people who are idiots out there.
Oh, so I'm an idiot now.
No.
That's
how did you suddenly go to him saying he's an idiot? You're
because
an idiot.
I'm the guy who orders mild, and he said there's idiots out there. I connected the dots.
I was talking about the people who order suicide wings, not the people who order mild. No, they're just wimps like you that order mild wings.
But again, I don't understand these people. Why do I have to be a person who bites into a raw jalapeno like some of these people do? I don't want to go on that guy's show to see what I could choke down and not throw up as far as how hot something is. I don't know what that show's called. Hot ones. I don't need to go on a show like that.
I did a hot ones.
Why do I have to prove myself while I'm eating? Why can't I just enjoy it?
Hey, when they had Jennifer Lawrence on, that was a hot one.
Okay. But why do I have to, you know what I mean? It's like, does everything in life have to have that amount of spice on it? No. The answer is no. That's where I stand.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right. That's it. That's it for Off the Post. Catch everybody next time.
Make sure to get some cool blue cheese for you.
Yeah, not blue cheese. Blue cheese is gross.
Anyhow,
and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.
Yes, please subscribe.
Bye.
Bye.